Hello, welcome back to BlenderSushi Live Noding. In this video, I'm going to explore some of ideas you can use to generate like things like structure or form that has more details. Um, I'm actually gonna show you also this kind of another tool called Structure Synth. It's something that I use as inspirations to make some artworks inside Blender. With Structure Synth, it's basically like similar to L3 system, but this artist or developer, what is his name? Mikhail, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but Mikhail HC developed this until around 2010, and this tool has stopped being developed, but you can still use it. But what's cool is lots of other artists are still using it, and these are some examples from Facebook Structure Synth user group, and it's all about creating these intricate kind of details. Some of them looks like fractal, but I really like this kind of example. Looks like architectural or building kind of design. When we look at something like this, it looks like a city and looks really complex, but actually Structure Synth does only kind of building blocks in a way. It's a scripting language, so there is no visual or node that you can use, but you just type in some rules and you can generate something like this. It's really inspiring for me. It's very like a free-form kind of design. This is like something like this looks like quite amazing. I don't know how it gets created, but some of the codes and script is actually being posted at this user group. So I might have a bit of study there. But something like this is really quite amazing. That's actually remind me of the architecture like this Kowloon wall city in Hong Kong. I think it is no longer exists. Maybe they demolish everything and replace it with a modern apartment or something. But I really like this kind of design. When I visited Hong Kong a few years back ago to look at details like this, the signage, and then this old looking apartment, I really loved it. It's really messy, but also it has a lot of details and richness in it. Of course, you probably don't want to live in something like this, but as a graphic element, it's really very beautiful. I wish I could have gone there and take pictures. That's Kowloon Wall City, but there's also this Chinese ghost cities that's surprisingly almost resembling the Kowloon, but they are empty and they look very cold and I don't know, looks kind of rigid. Maybe this is also kind of generative kind of design, but just a different kind of design compared to the Kowloon wall city, because this is like, I guess this is more organic in a way, because it's built, maybe people who live there build it, grow the city and build everything kind of without permission. They just keep building stuff, and so this is more organic compared to the one built by the Chinese government, probably for the people. And I don't know, but it's interesting to study. The thing with Structure Synth, of course, it's not like I said. It's all scripted. Maybe they have example here, but it's using Flash. So it's all scripted, let's say, and they are working a lot with the matrix. But what's really cool is really you're using simple form like boxes, and the rules generate those boxes repetitively or iteratively. let's say you want to draw 4 boxes. You draw the first box at the center, and then second box just translate in X 2 4 6. Okay, in this example, it's also showing that you can change the color of the box, so that's cool, and you can change the size of the box, so it can get smaller over time, and you can use sphere. You make rules, and this is where things get a little bit more complicated for if you're not a programmer. I tried, yeah, in a way I tried to emulate this kind of thing inside animation nodes, and this kind of shape is probably easy. Just use wiggle and grow the wiggle or something. But it gets more complex. But the rule is still simple. I don't know. I still don't know how to translate both. Sverchok actually have the structure synth kind of porting, and you can type the code and you can generate structure. I'm not gonna talk about Sverchok yet. Probably maybe a bit later, but really structure synth, and you think about it, just boxes can design such beautiful structure. Like currently animation nodes is keep being developed slowly, but surely I guess it's a lot of cool things will be added. But the other day I talked in the live noding about how fast it is in replicating mesh, and even if it's just a box, and apparently you can do a little bit more to it. So designing a form, if someone asks you how do you design a form, you can model it. You can perhaps like some people will think in a way like this, like just use some bunch of primitive and start designing your architecture kind of design. Maybe have different scaling just to make it a little bit more interesting. Just, you know, like a composition, you can do it like that, or a more advanced user might start to use particles. Sometimes you want to use grease pencil, or maybe start with a shape that's already kind of built. You can use Boolean for this actually. Maybe I should keep this form real quick. Wonder if I should just join this Control J. It's joined, but they are all still separate. There's a lot of modifiers also that you can use to kind of build your form, whether it's more abstract or more like if you want to model manually extruding or sculpting the form. It's totally up to you. But things like remesh is interesting. If we uncheck remove disconnected pieces, so you can easily get a structure like this, and they are all has this kind of wiring. Of course it still has the inside, unless you want to clean it up using Boolean. It's totally up to you. I guess a quicker demo is if I use a text as an example. So I'm gonna use this is another 3D type kind of design, but more random. Eventually I'm going to use animation nodes to kind of replicate the mesh, and I will show you something that you can use further. It's a cool thing that you can do if you cannot do if you are using particles and instancing, but you can do it easily if you're using things like animation nodes or Sverchok. So RX90, I'll just use the default Blender font, but I'm just gonna use a letter B for Blender. So a flat shapes you can use, but it's nicer if you can kind of brickify this thing. Brickify is a term I think used in Houdini. If you have a mesh like this, brickify basically can turn it into kind of grid kind of structure, and with a grid and a lot more points you can deform it. So that's a brickify. and I try to emulate this using Blender. So a flat letter is not so useful. Maybe I will extrude it slightly. Now you can do it like this, and you can bevel it. Doesn't matter what, because what I really want is something like a remesh. So if this is still a type object in Blender. Type object, you can you can still edit it, which is cool. But I really want to turn this into a mesh so we can mess around with it. If we just convert this text into mesh, you're gonna get this kind of messy kind of looking polygon mesh. I don't want it. I showed it to you before that it's a better way is to use a remesh modifier, and with remesh modifier now you have control over the mesh, a little bit more control, and this is actually still a type object. You can still edit it. There's edit stroke. No. If we convert this into a mesh object, polygon mesh, now this is a real polygon mesh object. Okay, so you can edit it, deform it in a much better kind of shape. That's the one I actually prefer. I will draw all the mesh so you can see the comparison. So from that, using remesh, you get something like this, which is really nice. Another thing you can do before I jump into animation nodes is you can, from here, if you want to have points that's kind of fill up the whole volume, kind of more like a, I don't know, I can't remember, maybe it's more like a Brickify in Houdini, or I don't know if Houdini actually have filled up the inside of the mesh with a grid, but you can do that if you use particles. So I'll show you how you can scatter points inside this volume of mesh. Turn on particles, and in this particle system I set the start and end to 1, so it's gonna scatter all the particles inside it. By default, it's actually scattering on the face, or you can scatter on the vertices as well, but what we want is volume. And with volume, you can pick a random volume and increase the number of points. It's totally up to you, or you can use grid. With grid, you have this resolution control, so this is kind of like a voxel, the voxel that you can use. It's gonna fill up this the volume of this mesh, basically. You can randomize it as well, but we can randomize it later using animation nodes. I'm gonna keep it just in the grid like this. So that's some of the trick I often use to generate a form, kind of like a building using a Lego brick, really. Hexagonal is nice as well. Wonder if I use hexagonal today. Invert grid. Okay, invert grid not so useful, but anyway. File. What we can do next, I know there are ways to convert these particles into points, but the cool way is to just export it as Alembic. This is actually a good method, and I think I will start using this idea, kind of baking out into Alembic time to time. So this is particle and this is hexagonal, and I will do the same thing again, but hexagonal off. File, export, Alembic, particle, grid, export Alembic. Okay, now I can probably delete this guy, or I can delete the original. So we have this, and we have this. I can delete this particle node. I'm gonna save it. File, import Alembic, particle grid. Oh, of course I get a extra camera and stuff. Delete. That's what I want. And there's another one. Particle hexagonal. Where's the particle? Wonder if the hexagonal one got baked. Oh, there you go. That's weird. So there's a hexagonal particles, and there's a normal grid. We can definitely use those for our purpose. File, save again. I really more appreciative of Blender really after using Sverchok and Animation Nodes. I know Blender is powerful, but all this add-on really kind of unleash or unlock Blender capability. I'm using an old laptop, and this is I thought this is impossible to do. It's actually impossible if I'm using Houdini and Maya. They're powerful, they're expensive too, you need a license, and they need a powerful machine in order to run it. You need a good graphic card as well, you know, like really high-end one can run all these simulations in Maya and Houdini, but they're really slow to run on the old computer and on my laptop such as this. But Blender can handle this kind of complexity without any problem, and that's, I think, really like a kudos to Blender developers and Blender as a tool. So okay, we have this mesh, and this points for voxel grid, and this is a hexagonal one, more interesting. This guy we can further modify it using, you know, things like remesh again, but you can use the block, of course. That's give you kind of a Lego kind of design as well. So more details, less details, but all this can be more interesting if we start putting more details. Kind of let me try using icosphere and try using cube and see the different result we're gonna get. So this guy can be our template. This guy is gonna be the donor. We're gonna replicate this guy over let's switch to animation nodes, compositing, animation nodes, new nodes tree, and let's start something. Really, I'm just gonna, you know, replicate them into this one of this guy. It's not particularly difficult. Get object mesh data. We start to slow down because I'm recording as well. Turn off always. Turn on frame change. Now it should be a little bit faster. This is the template. Get the template and get the objects to be replicated. And create a replicator. Replicate mesh data. Copy the data. So we need to do this first, and then transformations, we just plug the template into it, and we also need the mesh object output. Plug in the mesh data and generate, update. There you go. So that's the result. It's super fast. The transformation position we can deal later, but if I make the cube smaller, of course we get something that's more like a voxel. It's similar to this guy. Yeah, it's like a voxelated kind of design. I can turn on ambient occlusion on screen. Yeah. Currently, the limitation is we cannot really rotate or scale or yeah, we cannot rotate or scale. We can only position the stuff, the thing in, and they are pretty much like if we are like using particle instancer, but it's less. We have less ability to do anything with them inside animation nodes. Although you can always use the loop and stuff. I'm gonna keep it like this, you know, keep it simple. And at this moment, actually, I don't care much if they're overlapping. It's kind of similar to Structure Synth. It's actually a lot of overlapping blocks, but it generates structure. I care about the structure and things that we can do with it. You can actually go into this guy and start deforming this, displays it, and use a texture to display it. Jump into the texture itself and grab something like cloud or Voronoi. Maybe not. Yeah, Voronoi is okay. Not that strong. Something like that, and we can update it. Oh, actually, see, it doesn't seem to work. You need to enable use modifier, and then now that guy will update. So you can do that. But what's really cool, of course, is this guy is actually a real mesh. It's a real mesh. That means you can also deform this guy. This is a real object, mesh objects, but they are all separated blocks inside it. So we can displace modifier, and you see it's pushing each block, and you get this kind of look. We can use the texture, jump into it, and use things like cloud, for example. Now we start to see things that you might look in a fractal kind of design. Okay, this is yeah, this is how you start to deal with a detail kind of fractal looking. And this is still live, this is real time. I've actually never seen other 3D packages do this. That I mean, I have seen it maybe using Houdini, using my other computer. However, this is simple, you know, simple to do. And with simple and fast interactive, we can further investigate and explore this. Let's say I'm using an object which is this empty, and you know, I can scale the texture and have a look at the resulting form. I can rotate it as well. So it's totally up to you what you want to do with it. We can still go back to this guy and then change the texture. Instead of cloud, maybe Voronoi. This Voronoi has a, actually back to cloud. Cloud has other noise bases as well, like cell or Voronoi. Let's see if we look at cell. Cell gives this kind of bricks. It's actually more or less like a city. It's a the texture seems to be eating some of the box inside it. Yeah, kind of like the look of it. It's almost like the Kowloon city, really, and we still have control over this guy, and we can further displace it again. So I also that's a really powerful, I think. So that's a using the same texture. No, actually, this texture number 2. I can use Stucky for Noi or Musgrave. Musgrave can be nice. Musgrave multifractal size. That doesn't look like Musgrave. That looks like the cell one. I don't know what's going on. Blend cloud. Maybe it's mixing with the other one. Let me check again. So we have that one. maybe I turn it off, and then I have displace number 2, and using texture number 2 cloud, reduce the string. So that's cloud. Okay, cloud is almost, if I okay, it's I need to assign the displacement into. Okay, now I can move the cloud. Okay, that's cloud, and let me turn on the cell. So it's mixing, sometimes flipping the thing as well. I think they two are mixing together. Maybe, but that's a when using, if you're using this guy, and really we can also use the empty on this guy, so we are mixing those guys together. If I run the timeline, we have that kind of effects. Cool. Let's save this and continue on. I can duplicate the nodes tree, and okay, it's not duplicating. Let's go back to this guy. I wonder if I just duplicate this and make another target, and now I just source this guy, maybe the hexagonal one, and get the icosphere and update, so we get that now. And with icosphere I can scale it, of course. That's a really nice form, and again we can do the same thing. We can do the same thing with this. Just use displacement, modifier, and use texture. Let's see what we can use. Blend, blend, cloud. Cloud is almost always good looking. Empty, kind of exploring all this kind of different idea. Probably the normal is flipping out there, but I can scale it like really small, and I get this kind of design. It's almost like a, it's really organic. I really like the look of it. I haven't tested it with every possibility, but this is only using cube and only using icosphere, and they are not rotated. They're really just being scaled and being displaced further using this displacement method, of course. Yeah. What else we can do? If we really want, we can actually turn this guy into, we can remesh this guy using sharp, and this become a single object. It's really heavy to calculate, and you can also use the Lego one, kind of the voxel kind of look. It's kind of heavy, but I'll maybe just apply it. Applied modifier was not first, resulting may not as expected. Whoops. Really, I should have duplicate this and then apply it and then remesh. can duplicate this guy. Normally, if we are using particle instancers, I don't think we can use modifier together with this, because I don't know if particle instancer can do it. Maybe it can. I never tried, but doing it this way is probably easier for me to understand. I just cancel the operations. I don't know. Seems to be almost crashed. Did I save it? Let's see. Let's have a look. Yeah, so that's a few different ways you can start to think about creating this generative or procedural kind of structure. Probably not too new, but if this is the first time you do it this way, then why not? So apply the displacement and use remesh. Increase it. You can use sharp, or maybe I'll leave it like that. So from level here, okay, that's enough kind of detail. What you can do further is if you are using the micro displacement, you will get even more detail. So it's really kind of heavy for Blender to do it. It's you see, have a look at this structure. It's really complex and it's really beautiful. Of course, it's abstract, but it's so simple to do. It's we have the original shapes here, and we generate something like this. It's amazing. Let's go to this kind of view. I'm gonna switch to default. Maybe this is a lot faster if I hide the node editor. So this is single mesh, and we can further displace it. We can turn it into wireframe. It might crash, but maybe not. You can also remesh it and use block. And it's really fast and interactive. I don't know what else we can do with it. Maybe displace it further, or like I said, use a wireframe. Triangulate. They're already kind of triangulated. Okay, that's triangulate. It's exploding because of the. If I uncheck this, it's gonna become. It will try to maintain the form while having this wireframe kind of design. Sometimes you want this kind of look. Some other time you don't really want it because it's too wireframe-ish. What you can do to make it this more interesting, though, is if you use if you actually get rid some of the mesh at this complexity. If we use build modifier or decimate is not always the fastest to do, but what it does is if we reduce the number of mesh from 100% to 40%, like what I'm doing here, we're gonna have less mesh, and some of mesh gonna have hole, but and it has this kind of deconstructed kind of look. That's probably what you want. I haven't tried this using Sverchok or animation nodes, but you can grab the points and you can randomly mask some of the points, and that's probably what you can do. So it's about seeing the how generated objects being created. This video. So this process seems to be taking quite a while. I guess just experiment with it. In this video I'm just showing you some of the tricks I often use to procedurally generate form. This is I haven't used Structure Synth together with Blender yet. That's probably the next thing, or maybe I don't need Structure Synth. I'm happy with this kind of workflow. Maybe I just wait until we can rotate and scale the mesh. But really, what I want to say is, with Blender and Animation Nodes or Sverchok, you have control over the points and the edges. You can really separate the edges and maybe scale up and randomize the scale of the edges, and then turn the edges into pipes or kind of more like a 3D objects like sticks. Combine all of them together and you have these interesting details that kind of you can use to fake the look of Kowloon city. Really, that's kind of, I think that's the ultimate kind of design. It's not, it's the opposite of designing an architecture that's I don't know, maybe if I'm comparing to Zaha Hadid architecture, it's organic, it's parametric, it's beautiful, organic, and then you have something that's more like a Kowloon city, the total opposite. It's totally how can I say, natural, almost like a tree, kind of organic. It's a fractal kind of city design. Yeah, hopefully one day I can recreate using Blender. Yeah, so there you go. Thanks again for watching this BlenderSushi live noding video. Please leave comments and like the video and subscribe to the channel, and hopefully I make more videos like this. I'll see you next time.